Hey, what's up everybody? I'd like to welcome you to another JUCE tutorial, and today we're going to be talking a little bit about the slider class and also about the rectangle class. So this is carrying on from our last tutorial where we were talking about different components, drawing different elements of your GUI, and now we're going to get into actually putting a slider or a dial on the screen and discussing a little bit about how to properly position it and the best way to go about doing that. So as always, we're going to go ahead and open up the Producer, and we are going to do a new project. This time we're going to do a GUI application because that's what we're working with today. And I shall just call this dial test 1. Just put this in our JUCE folder. So as you can see, as usual, it creates our main.cpp, which is just giving our basic JUCE functionality, as well as our main component, which is where we will start drawing our GUI dials and components. So this is going to be a little bit different from the JUCE tutorials that you see online for get look and feel and customizing your knobs, because when I downloaded the tutorial on that, I saw that there were a couple different methods and things that were on there that I didn't quite get until I went into a little bit more detail. So what this tutorial is going to do is it's going to actually go into detail about what was downloaded from that tutorial and just going into it and discussing a little bit why the code is the way that it is, and discussing the best way to kind of get your GUI situated and your dials and sliders into the right positions. So we're going to go ahead and just open this up in Xcode as usual. And here we go. One of these days it'll open. And here we are. Okay, so we got dial tests. And here we go into... So the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to go into our header file for our main component. Now, normally if you were... I would assume, I'm just learning how to use JUCE myself, but I would assume that if you have different sections, like let's say that we're making a synthesizer and you had like an oscillator section, maybe that would be like a separate component, or like a filter section would be a whole component of its own with a whole separate class of its own. But since we're just going to be drawing one or two dials and doing just some basic kind of moves with that, we're just going to keep this all within the main component header file and C++ file. So if I just open up quickly the JUCE API, and just to show you where I'm getting these things from as always. So if we go into the slider class, which is right here. Okay, and as usual, the slider, all the different public methods that we have here are a little bit too extensive for me to cover in this tutorial. So what I'm doing is I'm just kind of doing this to get us started, getting some basic things up on the screen and getting some basic functionality out of it. And then maybe at a later point I can come in and we could do like a more advanced tutorial. But for now, we're just going to do some very basic just methods and getting things up on the screen. Okay, so just to show you, this is where we're getting all of this stuff from, the slider class. Okay, so if we go in here, and since the slider is part of one of the classes within the JUCE modules, we could just call that up without having to include a whole different header file. So I can just call this slider, and we'll just call this dial 1. Okay. Then we'll just go ahead into our C++ file. Okay, we'll just get rid of all this hello world stuff. Okay, we'll just do quickly we'll just quickly do our a background color here. So we'll do colors. We'll just make it aquamarine. And get rid of this. So if you're not familiar with what's going on so far, you may want to go back, check my past tutorials to get caught up. So I'm not going to really go over again what all of this is about, because that's already been covered. Okay, so first thing that we need to do is, since we have a component that's since we have a slider that we've created, dial 1 here, what we're going to do now is we're just going to make that visible. Okay, so I do dial 1 dot, oh my bad, add and make. Okay, but if I compiled that right now, you wouldn't see anything, because we need to specify a couple things first before it's able to actually be visible on the screen. Okay, so if we just look into our class reference real quick just to see where we're at. Okay, so one of the things that we need to specify is what sort of slider style that we have. Okay, so you can, as you can see, there are quite a few different options that we have here. Okay, but we're just going to go with a rotary slider today. Okay, so if we just scroll down here into, and we see this method, set slider style. Okay, and then we just need to call slider style, and then here are our options auto completing for us, and we've got our rotary slider that we're going to create there. Okay, now another method that we have here that we have is text, set text. Let me just find it, set text. Okay, so we have set text box style. So if we wanted to name the text box, or if we wanted to have the value of what our dial is, then we can go ahead and do that here. So we could do dial 1 set text box style. Okay, and just to demonstrate for you what to do if we don't know what needs to go in here, if I just go into text entry box position and I press and hold command, click there, then I can see all of my options here. So we have no text box. We'll do text box below for this one. Okay, so we could do, oh, I messed it up, set text box style. So we got slider, text box below. Okay, so this Boolean, if it's read only, okay, if we set that to if we set that to true, then we can't actually type what value that we would like in the box. So we're just going to set that to false. Okay, so if we wanted to, if the dial was at 0 and I just wanted to type 5 and I wanted it to the value to go right to 5, then I could do that. Okay, so now the box width, I'm just going to set it to 50 pixels. The height, I'll just set it to, let's set it to 20 pixels. Okay, so now we have our text box style, we have our slider style. Now we have to just set where we want the slider to be. We have to set the bounds. So here we could just do that. So we got dial 1 set bounds. Okay, and then we'll do get local bounds. Okay, and as we said before, get local bounds just looks at what we've set the size of our component to, and we can see that it's 600, 400. So if I compile here, hopefully we should have a slider in the screen. Okay, so it's just compiling forever. linking. Man, taking a long time. Okay, here we go. Great. So here's our dial. Okay, and you can see as I move it, then we see the value in the box below. If I wanted to type, let's say I type 5, then it goes right to 5. Okay, so as we can see, the slider is big because we've set the bounds to the dimensions of our main window. And so what we're going to do now is we're just going to discuss exactly how we can get a really useful way of drawing the GUI. And this is where we're going to go in a little bit into the rectangle class. And the reason that the reason that we're going to draw it using the rectangle class rather than just saying, okay, I want it to be, at position 1010 with a position with a width of 20 pixels and a height of 20 pixels. The reason that we're doing this, the reason that we're doing it this way is so that, let's say that we just build a synthesizer and it's, a desktop VST that we would use in Ableton. But say at some later point we wanted to take it and make it adaptable for an iPad or for your mobile phone, then what we could do is we could make this would already be scalable so that we can scale it to any size, and that everything all of your dials and your sliders and your GUI will remain relative to the size of the screen rather than setting kind of hard-coded positions. Okay, so let's go ahead and close out of this. So now we're going to create a rectangle object. Okay, so if we go back into our API real quick and then go to rectangle, okay, and one thing that I was wondering when I first started doing the JUCE framework was, why do we have just a rectangle class? Why isn't there like an ellipse class or a triangle class? And the reason that there's a rectangle class is because so many of these things we're doing when we're drawing a GUI are we're putting it into sections that are typically a rectangle. Okay, so it allows us to just kind of section off different areas of our screen as kind of property of certain components. Okay, so here's our rectangle object, and once again we have a bunch of different methods here. Okay, and we're just going to use a few of those. Okay, so I hope I get this all right. So we're going to create a rectangle object. Okay, and the rectangle is going to be of type int, and we'll just call this area. And then we're going to set that to our local bounds. So all we're doing is we're just creating a rectangle that's the same size as our main window and as the window in our main component. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to start sectioning off the rectangle to create our dial size. Okay, so we're going to create another rectangle object, and we're just going to call this dial area. Okay, so what we've got is we've got the rectangle that's the area of our main window, 600 pixels by 400 pixels. Okay, and now what we're going to do is we're going to start kind of sectioning that off into a relative size for our dial. Okay, so we're going to do area dot, and now what we're going to do is we're just going to section that off. So going to do remove from bottom. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to just take this, we're just going to take our rectangle that's the same size as our screen, and we're just going to divide it in half for now. Okay, so we're talking about the y coordinate for now, and what we're going to do is we're just going to divide that in half. Okay, so we're going to do area dot get height divided by 2. Okay, and so all we've done here is we've just taken the rectangle that we're calling the area, same size as our main as our main window, which is 600 by 400, and we've just cut it in half on the y-axis. Okay, and now let's just see what that does. If I just change this now to dial area, okay, and we can see that that's actually set it at the bottom of this, at the bottom of the screen. Okay, because what we've done is if we just comment this out for a second, put it back to our original here. This kind of takes a second to get your head around. It took me a second to get my head around it, but now I can see why this is just the logical way to go about drawing any sort of GUI, so it's scalable for any size. So what we did was we just basically cut the screen in half, okay? And then what we did was we removed the bottom half of our imaginary rectangle, and then what happened was it drew a dial that was half of the size, and then since it got rid of the area from the bottom, basically that whole area dropped down, and that's why you saw it on the bottom. Okay, so if I do remove area from top, rather than from bottom, what we should see is the dial on the top half of the screen, but in the middle. Okay, and that's what we see. Okay, so we removed the area from the top. Okay, so we removed half of our original rectangle from the top. Then we have the bottom, so then we had the bottom half, and the bottom half drew at 0, 0, and that's why we have our knob at the top half. Okay, so when it removes it from the bottom half, it actually kind of positions it up. Okay, so now, okay, so we've got it in the middle of the screen. Now let's just go ahead and take that dial and let's move it over here to the left. Okay, so what we have to do is we have to, if we're just thinking about what we need to do there, we need to actually cut out the left-hand side of the screen. So we're cutting the left-hand side of the screen so that this dial actually slides over to the left. Okay, so in here, we don't need to create another rectangle object. What we could do is we could just take the area that we have, and then we could just remove from left, and then we're just removing half of our space on the x-axis. Okay, so we would just want area dot get width divided by 2. Okay, and this should draw it on the left-hand side of the screen. Okay, what I'll do. Okay, there we go. Okay, and there we have it. Okay, so that's what's happened there. Okay, so just to give you another idea of exactly how this is drawn to the screen, I'll just go ahead and I'll create a rectangle object within my paint component. Remember, all of your actual drawing and graphic stuff happens in your paint component. Okay, so let's just create another rectangle object, or two rectangle objects that are the same size as what we have in our resized function. So we got total. So we'll create one called total area. Okay, equals get local bounds. So that's a rectangle that's the same size as our component window that we're as the component that we're within, which is 600, 400. Okay, and then we're going to create another one that's just going to be the area where we would prospectively want just the dial. Okay, so we'll just call that section area equals get local bounds. Oh wait, no. So that would be total area remove from top. So we're taking the top half, okay, and we're just removing it. So we're just going to do area dot get height. My audio complete can't keep up with me. Total area. Oh, it's because I'm out of scope here. So total. There we go. So we should be fine now. Okay, and so let me just comment this out. Okay, then we'll just set the color. Okay, and then we'll just draw our rectangle. Okay, and here we just want to put in our rectangle object, which is called section area. Okay, so this is just to demonstrate exactly what's kind of sectioning, what's kind of just sectioning off there. So you can see that it's drawn a rectangle there in the top half of the screen. So it removed the top half of the rectangle, and then it took that section, then it took our section and it just moved it up. Okay, so now let's just say that I wanted to remove this left hand side. Okay, so we'll just do that. So let's see, so let's just do another rectangle object here. I'll call that section area 2 equals section area dot remove from left. Okay, and then we're doing section area dot get width divided by 2. Okay, so all we're doing is we're just taking that section and we're dividing it in half on the x-axis, and what we should end up with is a rectangle that is just in the top left-hand corner of the screen. Okay, and that's what we have there. Okay, so we had one that was just half the screen, and then we removed the left-hand side of it. Then that left-hand side, then what happened was the right-hand side slid over, and now we have now we have just that top left-hand corner left. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. Okay, cool. So we can just remove all this for now, and now let's just do another little dial here, and just to get another, just to get into the workflow of just drawing these things to the screen. So we'll just call this dial 2. Okay, and then what we need to do is we just need to just set our parameters here. So we're just going to set the slider style. Okay, I haven't done this yet, but let's just try making it a different. Well, I'll do it as a rotary one first. So let's do slider. Then we're just doing our slider style. And we're just going to do rotary, another rotary slider. Okay, dial 2. We're just going to set our text box style now. Okay, and then so it's slider, text. So there's actually one on here that's called no text box. So that's if you didn't want one. So we'll just do that real quick. Okay, we'll make that false. There's no text box, so the dimensions of the box itself would be 0, 0. So, and now we got dial 2. And just got to make it visible. Let's see, we got an error somewhere. Okay, and dial 2. Okay, what have I done here? What's it saying? Just forgot a semicolon. Semicolon. Okay, cool. So now we just need to draw. We just need our set our bounds. Okay, so let's do set bounds. Okay, now let's just do area here for a second and see what happens. Okay, I'm actually curious what's going to happen here. Should just, yeah, so it just draws it on the lower half of the screen. Okay, and that's because our interesting, it doesn't draw it over the other slider, which is quite interesting. It must see that there's that the other slider is there, so it doesn't draw it into the same area. That's interesting. So let me just do this now. If I comment this out, now my feeling is that it would draw to the middle of the screen again. So let's just. Oh, and it's drawing it to the bottom of the screen. Yes, okay. And that's because we've actually removed the area from the top. So what's happening is that when we've removed the top half, we've removed half of the area, so that's why it's drawn to the bottom of the screen. Okay, so yeah, so this means that this actually removes that space from the area once it does that. Okay, cool. So if I just set this now to dial area dot remove from right, then we're just going to do the same, just taking away the half the screen. Then it should draw it up on the top right hand side. Okay, which it does. And as you can see, the slider is this rotary is a little bit bigger because it doesn't have the text box under it. So if you can imagine just a rectangle around it, and then that's how it's deciding what the how big the rotary is going to be. Okay, so we could also do, well, let me demonstrate this real quick. Okay, so just to show one reason why it's useful to do our GUIs this way. So if I just set the size to 300 rather than 600, and then just recompile, then what you see is that the sliders stay relative to their position. Okay, it's still covering the top quarter section of your GUI. Okay, so no matter how big or how small I set the screen, the size is relative. Okay, so another thing that they did, let me just do this on the fly here, see if I can do this. So if we do a constant int, and then we just create a border, and let's just make that 10 pixels. Okay, and then in our set bounds, what we could do is we can remove, so what we're going to do is we're going to remove the area from the left, and then what we could do is we could actually set a 10 pixel border around the area that we've removed. So what happens is that everything gets 10 pixels smaller in both, in from the left hand. So basically your rectangle gets 10 pixels smaller in every direction. So it's not just like 10 pixels in the X direction, 10 pixels in the Y direction. It's 10 pixels from the left, 10 pixels from the right, from the top, and from the bottom. Okay, so if I just do, I think it's reduced. Yeah, so we got reduced. Okay, so this may look a little bit complicated if you're seeing this for the first time, but let me just walk you through. Okay, so we've got the rectangle, which is the same area as our screen. Okay, 300, 400. Okay, we've removed the top half from that rectangle. Okay, so what we have is just the bottom half of the rectangle. Okay, because we divided it in two. Okay, then so then what we have is just one rectangle that would be residing in the top half of the screen, because we've removed the top half, so the bottom slides up to the top. Okay, now we've removed half the area from the width. Okay, and we've removed it from the left, so now the area, so now your dial slides over to the left. Okay, and now we've reduced it by 10 pixels on each side. We've reduced that rectangle area by 10 pixels on each side. Okay, with this method called reduced. Okay, so what's going to happen is that it's just going to be a little bit smaller. Okay, and that just gives you like a little bit. That just gives you a little border. Okay, around that. Okay, so let's just try one more thing. I haven't tried this. Let's just create one more. Okay, and we'll do it as a slider. Okay, see how good I can work on the fly here without having prepared first. Let's just call this slider 1. Okay, and then we're just going to set our parameters here. So slider 1, set slider style. Okay, and once again, just to demonstrate for you, if we wanted to find out what slider styles we have available to us, I could just command click in there, and we got this list of sliders here. Okay, so we'll just do linear, horizontal. Okay, I'll just copy that here. Okay, so we'll just do slider style, linear, horizontal. Okay, then we'll do slider. Oh, forgot my semicolon again. Then we'll just do slider 1 dot set text box style. Okay, and then we'll just call this slider text box. We'll just do it below again. Okay, and we'll make this false again, so we would be able to recalculate the value just by pressing a number into the screen if we wanted to. And we'll just make it let's just do 50 pixels by 20 pixels again. Okay, and now we just need to set the bounds. Okay, so we got slider 1 dot set bounds. Okay, and then I'll just if I just do it by the area, then it should just draw it in the middle on the bottom of the screen. Okay, so I haven't done this before, but I need to actually draw it to the screen. Okay, so we do add and make visible, slider 1, and let's just see what happens here. Apologies if you can hear my French bulldog snoring in the background. Okay, great. So it's just done a horizontal slider there, and it's done it and it's got the text box below. Okay, so that's where I'm going to go ahead and end this tutorial. And yeah, if you have any questions or if you feel confused by the way that I've done that GUI, or I haven't explained it well enough, just drop a comment below and I'll try to explain it a little bit better. And then for our next tutorial, we'll just go into more of the customization of the sliders, how to make them different colors, how to just kind of set them to different, set different values for them. And that's where we're going to end. Be sure to like it and subscribe and all that business if you like the video. Okay, and I'll see you next time. Take care. Bye.